Those guys. Pick that up. Alright, that should be everybody, I think. Except for my dog. Alright. This page penciled in here. Oh, this panel anyway. Get this going. I think I caught a rhythm, so I think okay to come on. I've been trying to focus on getting stuff done. So this is the next panel here. These are the two I've done today. And that's the next one. So anyway. Made some executive decisions. I was going to do something somewhat different with this page, and then I kept looking at it. I'm like, I should do something else. And so I did the other thing, and I think that made a difference. So. Bit of depth here. Push this back. All right. Well, happy Saturday, everybody. Oh, sounds like trouble outside. Everybody honking their horn. Hopefully for good reason. I always appreciate horn honkers out there making noise for no reason at all sometimes, I don't get it, but I guess some people do. Good evening, everybody. This is stripped a little bit. Too much. There we go. And we got our first bot. Let's block that. Bam. And poof. At least they know the chat's working, right? It's always important. Make sure it's all functional. Blowing out the highlights there for some reason. This is the aftermath of the explosion. So, whole crew is gone except for him. Gotta send him off. Send their ashes back to Earth, as it were. I think I've kind of uncovered a good kind of working process where I kind of rough it in, based off the thumbnails I've done before, and then erase that back, so it's kind of a ghost, like you see here, and then do something more precise on top, and then depending on how that goes, I can, if it goes all right, don't worry about it, but if it's needs another pass, I can erase that back, and then do a final pass on that. We're going to be putting a board to the prior. Nothing special about that process, I'm sure, but I'm always looking for working patterns in the things that I do. So it's less for me trying to like establish one, it's kind of see what I'm actually doing, so I know what actually works, and take some patience to pay attention to that. But once you kind of see it, it's helpful that you can, because you can repeat that, and it tells you how long things take, and so you better allocate your time. That was always something that was very challenging for me to kind of figure out was, how long does it take you to do something, or when can we expect it by? I wasn't always sure when dealing with a client, how long I should spend on something, because I just didn't know. Now I can say, more confidently, oh, this will take me a week, or this will take me an afternoon, or a day, or whatever. But it's important to kind of sort that out, pay attention to what you do, so you can communicate that to other people. Like, I think I can pencil a page a day, depending on the level of complexity. So I think like I could finish this whole page, these 2 pages in 2 days. then so that's one thing I think doesn't get discussed enough in education and that preparation for professional efforts is that kind of getting to that ability to communicate that kind of information. Not that you have to do it for yourself, but if I want to figure out what I'm doing with the project, then I want to figure out how long something's going to take me. I want to be able to sort that out as early as possible. So we've got some bodies here on the ground. Right? So that's just something to think about, when you're working toward your own professional endeavors. What does that mean? And it makes a big difference for the confidence that clients can have in your work, especially if you deliver on those estimates ahead of time. So anyway, yeah, usually let me know if there's any questions or comments out there. I don't mind talking while working. My goal here tonight is to finish up these top 3 panels on this right page. So if I can get that done, maybe get the other page started down below, the other big frame down below, that should set me up to complete this page by tomorrow. And I'll have this whole sequence done, and I can start looking at it. Be nice. Alright, so we have some this part might have to get redrawn down here, so I get it kind of laid in. We have these fallen comrades down here. in various states of disarray due to trauma inflicted by the explosion that took them all out. So, trouble, right? Is that sharp enough up there? It's too bright. Seems okay. It's a little blurry. It's so blurry. There we go. That's sharp. It should being blurry over there. That's much better. Sorry, the overhead camera was like blurry for some reason. So I'll probably have to insert this one. It's not a big deal. Shoulder there. Put the head on his chest. And a prayer to old Earth as he commends their ashes to their planet long left behind. Tragedy strikes, right? Sometimes when you're out there with the bros and you gotta blow stuff up to hopefully try to escape, but it doesn't save everybody. Sometimes it takes out a lot of people. You lose it all in the hope of gaining a little something. It's all kinds of trouble. They talk to you. Yeah. As usual, let me know if there's any questions or comments out there. Yeah, be careful too with these smaller panels. Don't overinvest time, but don't do a short shrift either. Let's see. Good evening, just popping in. And as usual, let me know if there's any questions or comments out there. Yeah, the lead holders are handy. It's just, they got your little spinner, and you know, just makes it easy. I wish they made. Sometimes I kind of wish they made. I mean, these Mitsubishi unis as a lead are really nice, but kind of wonder what it'd be like if Blackwing made like a 2 millimeter lead that you could put into a lead holder that didn't go into a wood pencil. But supposedly, some people like this brand even better than they like the Black Wings. I've got these in wood pencils too, but you know, but they don't, as far as I know. I haven't heard. But then I only learned like last week about like refillable, or a couple weeks ago, refillable uh, brush pens that have like refillable cartridges. So like this is a Kuretake, but you can also get it so you install a refillable cartridge, and so you put whatever ink you want in there. There are the other like brush pens and things like that that are just like a big tank inside. But I guess that's true of even some these type of pens as well, where you can do that. And then I realized I could also, just by getting these little syringes that are for this, I can also do it with some other pens that I have, like these parallel pens here that are specifically for calligraphy writing. So they got like a flat tip, and you can also write with the narrow side too. But they come with specific cartridges that you're supposed to use, but it's like a marker type ink inside. And I'm very sensitive to color temperature, and that marker water soluble ink it has a blue tint to it, and that just kind of bothers me at a deep artistic level, I guess. And so what I did is I emptied out the cartridge and I put in this non-clogging ink from Kohinoor that you're supposed to use with the rapidographs, which I have over here. And so I was like, oh, non-clogging, that means it's probably good to use with these parallel pens. So I bought some of those refillable cartridges for some of the other things that I have, but then I also picked up a bunch of these little syringes. And you would never want to poke yourself with one of these because they're too blunt, obviously. But they're perfect for injecting ink into a used cartridge. That's what I did with the parallel pens, because these come with you unscrew these. Yeah, so this is the, I think, 3.8. I think I like the little bit narrower one, the 1.5, but this is the cartridges you actually use with it, but I just cleaned it out and then injected the ink I actually want to use inside of it. And that's working out. Seems like it works really well. Looking forward to trying it out, because I like to use like the same ink on the page if I can. I don't know that matters. Like I'll watch, professional comic book artists, and they'll just like do whatever. Just use markers and real ink and different pens and things on the same page. And something about my background just won't let me do that. I want to be real ink all the time. Yeah, if you want one of these syringes, it came with a pack. It was a pack of 5, and so I only really need to like maybe 1 or 2 to have. Yeah, I watched his Fridays with D-Dubs, and he's just like he's pulling out a big fat marker, and then he's got his whiteout on top of it, and and it's just kind of. I've got the leader number 2 whiteout that I like quite a bit, but like I don't want to mix marker with ink. I think part of it is like the light fastness of marker is not great, whereas with like real ink that's made of carbon, it's going to be much better. Because that marker ink again will always lean into that blue, and that's the kind that can easily get destroyed by light. And maybe I shouldn't be worrying about uh, the archival quality of my work, but my background in like painting and that's always kind of made me aware of that, and so think about it probably more than I should be concerned with. But again, if I wasn't worried about archival whatever using materials, I would just go digital, maybe. I've got some pretty great brushes and things I've put up together on the computer, or on my iPad and the computer. And, I think they'd look good as a comics thing. I use them for illustration and concept art and all that stuff for myself. But with all the AI stuff, I've just really shifted a lot more over to trying to use analog materials as much as as makes sense. I even get to do a analog materials class this semester. We didn't have to, but I'm using that as a class where I can do that. Even if it's not like my most favorite material, we're using acrylic, which I found I've greatly improved in. But yeah, I think it's just something, there's things that happen when you're working with your physical things rather than the digital. I think the more digital things get, the more binary, the more code based, the more algorithmic. I think it can close possibility in a way that you might not be aware of. So by using it, because you are working on the computer, you're always working with pixels. And even like this, when I scan this in, and after it's been inked and everything, when I do the inking over the printout of these images here, that changes it to digital. But then I do the inking on top, and within the analog medium, you get infinite or nearly infinite volume of possibilities, because the marks I make here on the paper, at least, they don't get reduced to digital pixels. They don't get reduced to an algorithm, a binary algorithm. Whereas anything you do on the computer or the iPad or whatever, ultimately, it's ones and zeros that it gets reduced to as pixels on the screen. And I think that within itself is even if it's not obviously on the surface, a limiting factor, there's some aspect to it that homogenizes it. I think that you don't get inherently with analog media. That's not to say that you can't do incredible work digitally. I've seen lots of all kinds of crazy stuff. But a lot of the kind of things I think is always fun is people trying to emulate analog media with digital. And I always find that somewhat humorous. Because, why not let it be digital? Let it be the medium. If you want to make things look like they're oil painted or penciled or inked, with real inks, why not just, draw it with that? And, why try to make it look like something it isn't? Like, what's the accomplishment there? something that sits on my brain once in a while. I have too much time to think about things when I'm working. If that makes any sense. One of the things I hate about playing stuff on, speaking of digital, but you're playing music on streams or whatever from a streaming service, it's like, they start playing remixes of things. um, I hate that for some reason. Sorry about your toe there, buddy. I think it's feeling better though. Wish you'd leave it alone. Sorry, just talking to my dog. Yes, I think it's something I freaked out because I teach at a university and we're kind of the commercial art department basically. It's a blend of different things, but um, basically it's for illustrators and people looking for visual effects and graphic design to a certain degree and some other things, but I'll talk about that in meetings once in a while or talking to faculty. It's like, with things being what they are, I wonder if it was a mistake. This was like a big transition when I was in school, but to emphasize digital media over analog media. Oh yeah. One thing I should look up. I know there's a radio station I used to listen to in college, KOHS. It's the Orem High School station, 91.7. It was a high school radio station. It's still around. I guess they have gone onto the internet now. It was funny because as you would drive, this was out in Utah, as you would drive north towards Salt Lake City, that 91.7, as you would go past a certain point, would transition into a Christian radio station. So it'd be like these high schoolers playing like 80s alternative rock into like this Christian pop music channel, which is always pretty funny. But I always enjoyed their channel because they play kind of somewhat obscure 80s songs like Interferon by Baby Pain, which is a classic. You probably won't. You think you can find it on YouTube, but I think I found it off some site, some band that never really took off in the 80s. But but I liked popping in on that station. It was funny because they whenever they would do like their sports announcements, so they do the announcements for their sports teams or whatever. I never really listened to very much of that because I just don't really care about that. But it's funny just because they're not professionals; they're high school kids, and so it was just entertaining to listen to them mess things up, or when they would do like live versions of the radio show, they'd mess things up, or say they were going to play one thing and play another thing. I just always found that to be entertaining. And then they would go offline during the summer. Sometimes they would have like a set playlist or something they would do in the summer. Yeah. I do kind of miss local radio to a certain degree. Like I haven't listened to any local radio in a long time. Part of it is just I don't listen to ads, but I do miss kind of the flavor because I remember listening to local radio before the streaming stuff really picked up on cell phones. I do feel like the algorithms used to give you better suggestions. Like I started doing the music subscription stuff back with Music Match, even before it got bought by Yahoo, before it became Yahoo Music Match. I felt like I discovered like a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have heard of otherwise with it, but I don't really feel like the modern algorithms really do that very well, at least. You can set it to do more obscure stuff. Usually they'll do like B sides of songs or whatever. Like I had to like ban one band permanently off of my music playlist because they just kept sending me the same song from that band. Like they wouldn't like I couldn't get rid of that just one song, so I had to like get rid of the whole band. So they would just leave me alone. Well, it's like in my case, it was like I like a lot of the indie stuff, and so they would give me like of Monsters and Men, and they would only play like their most popular song over and over again. It would show up multiple times in the playlists. Uh, so I blocked the whole band. I don't think they're a bad band. I just I don't want to hear that song again ever in my life. I don't remember what it's called anymore. I don't know if they were paying to have it in there all the time or what, but just would not go away. Maybe it's similar with your Lemonheads. Um, it's like I maybe want to hear it once a week. Um, yeah, this is page 7 and 8 that I'm working on here. I was going to do something entirely different on this two sets of pages. So, whoops, sorry about that. This is what I was going to do. So, partially what I got here is like this stuff up here is similar to what we have going on. Let's expand that out a little bit here. There we go. So, like what I have here is similar to kind of what I was going to do across here to a certain degree. I've been looking at this as I started this page, and the first thing I did is actually I have a panel over here, and I had it over here. I traced it off on the other one over here, so I still have it, but I erased it completely off of here. So I realized I think I just need this whole page, and I'm going to have like this big panel down here. Whereas before we were taking this is all flashback up through here, and then it was going to shift into what's going on now on these other two pages. And I was like, I was kept looking. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't really work, and I think it can work better if we do it this way. So yeah, so that's why I was making that executive decision this morning. This is the trauma that I deal with every day in my life. But yeah, it's like just sometimes these one thing is probably partially one of the reasons I hate all this not AI nonsense is I just look at the impact that even basic algorithms have on what we do, and well, there's definitely benefits and things to having things algorithmically determined to a certain degree. Like having my bills planned ahead of time. But that's just putting them on a schedule. It's not really an algorithm. It's just setting up a time and a date for them to get paid, like my rent. I don't have to think about paying it; it just automatically happens. And but yeah, it's I think kind of getting those things in your way is a problem. That's what I was saying about the art stuff. So there was this, it's like I could do all this digital and probably would be faster, maybe. But I kind of look at it, I'm just like, well, I could do it, but it's not really going to take me that much more time to do a traditional media. I might, in the long term, it probably might save me a lot of time, but at the same time, it's kind of, if I'd like it to look as if I inked it anyway, so why not just, ink it? Why, go through that process of making it look like it was done with real ink? And again, at the same time, it's like, even if you do make distinctive brushes, and again, it's not that you can't do really great things digitally, but, I think you have to kind of really go out of your way with it to make your voice visible in the work. And I think, when you're working with analog media, like it's just kind of right there on the paper. Like there's no stabilizer, there's no brush effect. You're not using most of what the brushes do in most programs is they make a little stamp and they're layering that stamp. So like the round brush is just a circle that's being stamped over itself. Or textured brush, you're just taking a single texture or maybe multiple textures and you're stamping it. And there's nothing wrong with that, necessarily, but it does lead to that fact that you're putting down a pattern. Whereas with this, it's graphite, and it's got all of its natural, real world variation built into it inherently. That you don't have to fiddle with sliders to make different. And that's led me to kind of talk to the advocate with the faculty that maybe, and even if students are going to do mostly digital work in their whatever professions they pursue, if they do it all, just seems like you might have lost something with the use of the physical or analog media. So, and one of the other arguments I make is that because, I'm sorry your foot's bothering you, puppy. It's my dog. At least he's letting me clip it, so that's good. I'm trying to keep his bad toenail clipped short so we can get it to heal properly. But those kind of things, like I'll talk about there with the other teachers, and sometimes it gets me funny looks because the transition of generations of work, people have gotten really invested in doing the digital thing, and I'm not immune to that effect, obviously, because when I was a student, we didn't have our full-time faculty didn't know anything about digital media that much. I mean, like I had a full-timer who taught like the Adobe Suite class, but that was kind of not his thing. He was an acrylic children's book illustrator. And it wasn't, he'd never done digital media professionally because nobody did really at that point. It was relatively new. So, obviously wouldn't expect that from him. And so I learned a lot on my own. We did have one adjunct faculty member who was art director at a game company. They did the Brood Wars expansion. That's kind of what the company was known for before they went under. some corporate malfeasance going on. But so, but yeah, but one of the things I think that happens with, I think it gets kind of, I don't know if I've found the proper way of explaining it to people yet, but basically because it is more challenging because you have to, because you can't back up, right? When you paint with acrylic or watercolor or even with pencil to a certain degree, certain amounts of your marks are indelible. You can't remove them, and so you really have to kind of go out on a limb every time you're making something to a certain degree, and as a result, you have to develop your skills, your thinking, your abilities, your faculties to a certain level, and it grows your brain, right? So by learning to do new things, you add wrinkles to your brain, you get more intelligent, you get more capable. And I think if we focus on media that are easy to use, you retard that process in the literal sense. You reduce the opportunity, and you open the door for those that would have been unwilling to go through that process of excellence and skills development. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's such big problems in a lot of modern media. Is you have they let in a lot of people that in the earlier days would not have gotten in, because these are people that would have not been willing to develop themselves, or unable to, lacking the talent or the disposition to pursue that high degree of excellence. And that's not true of everybody, but I kind of look at that and I'm thinking, well, if you look at the really great concept artists, we kind of go back to their stuff over and over and over again. A lot. I watched Alien Earth recently, which was I would give it a C plus. Like, there were a lot of things I liked about it. The ending was kind of deflating. I really wanted to see what that eyeball was going to do, but I was hoping it would say at least one thing, but it did not. All they got to do was stamp out some numbers on of pi into the fifth decimal or something like that, which was kind of, not what I was hoping for. You did see it, enter a corpse at the end of the episode, but that was about it. Yeah, but I think the variety of materials, the skill level it takes to get good at these materials. Like, ever watched like Sid Mead? You can find a handful of videos on YouTube where he's doing an abstract painting demo for some like Japanese news station, and he's just fluidly tossing out these gouaches all over the place. Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things I saw in this video, they were pointing out that the Prometheus, people are like, "What's up with Prometheus?" Like, it's part of that same, like, it's a moon of that same planet that the other movies happened on, right? I guess there's a third moon, and I guess the idea is that there was like three different labs that the big guys had, and so the Prometheus is one where it was like their weaponized version of the black goo, and I guess the one where they the first movie happened, where Alien happened, was basically their kind of storage facility for the kind of the final result that they were hoping to get, which was the eggs. And so they had like the research facility at the Prometheus one, and then there was speculation on what the other moon that's never been visited was for. Like it was another planet. What do you mean the Covenant? I hated Covenant. It was that movie didn't make any sense to me at all. Um, it seems like even like Alien Earth, they did this too, where they rely on what's called an idiot plot. Where basically, everybody's stupid. Everybody makes really bad decisions like the entire time. And so, like in Covenant, like that entire crew is just a basket case of morons. Um, it was in Prometheus too, but like at least you can believe that Idris Elba is a serious person. Um, no, like I like the production design on Prometheus. I thought it was a gorgeous movie. But you used to watch the movie, just like, what are these people thinking? Like they step onto an alien planet and they immediately take off their helmets. They don't spend some time, investigating it a little bit. They're not like in a huge hurry to get where they were originally going to go. Um, but Alien Earth, I thought it was pretty good. It's just I think they started dealing with the fact that the kids really aren't the kids that they said they were. Like they've got their minds, but towards like the second to last episode, they come across their graves, where their human bodies are buried, and they're kind of the Wendy character, Marcy, I think is her real name. Oh yeah, the one where they're a bunch of like with like they're a bunch of like professional killers. That had a lot of good stuff. I didn't think the ending was kind of a mess, but I kind of liked it at the same time. I remember like, oh, that's actually I liked it better than Predators 2. Um, it's hard to beat the original Predator though, especially once they get into the jungle and the Predator gets going on him. Like that's just solid, solid movie, right? With the it's basically most dangerous game, but with an alien monster chasing them around, and that's just it's hard to beat that movie. But yeah, like the dialogue doesn't matter because of course Arnold can't speak English very well. Uh, he's tried. I won't fault him for trying. English is a messy language to learn, but yeah. But a lot of people really like Predators too, and I watched them. It's like, why do people like this movie so much? Like, it's just kind of stupid. Um, I kind of like there was that kind of they're doing like that cheap video game style animation. They did like that Predator Hunter thing or something like that on Hulu. I thought that was okay. I didn't get the grandma Viking lady being able to like go through what she was going through. She's like 67 and she's running around with like axes and swords and you know I know it's a cartoon and everything, but the ending was kind of interesting where they showed in the end credits that all these past people that have defeated predators are in storage, including Arnold. Yeah, it was also had like all those '80s tropes about inner city violence, like the whole city was like a war zone, and that was pretty funny. Guys were all shooting each other up in like major gang battles. I mean, I'm sure there were places in New York that were relatively similar to that back then. You know, the late '80s or whatever. But to a certain degree. But it had its entertaining aspects. But I'd be curious to see if someone would do like a re-edit of it and what that would be like. You know, there's an edit of the Star Wars prequel films where it's an hour and a half long and it cuts all three movies together. And it is much better. It's still not that good, but um, but I'd be curious to see if someone could re-edit it into like a stronger film. That's a lot of times where movies get broken is in the editing. So they've got all this material and then they got to splice it all together. And the splicing it together is often where a movie can be broken or made. Just by how that's usually what makes art good. It's not so much what it's about, but how the subject is presented. And that's often what makes something great art. Like you can tell any kind of goofy nonsense story that you want, but if you organize it and present it in such a way that makes it compelling, that makes a big difference for how it's received. It's like I like to point out that I think it's Barbed Wire has the same plot as Casablanca, but it's Pamela Anderson plays Rick. Um, and obviously, one of those movies is very good, right? Casablanca is a classic, and I don't think I've seen only snippets of Barbed Wire. Um, but it's the same story, with a different setting. But one is definitely higher quality compared to the other. Yeah, I never watched it. I only realized that it was like back when I would actually watch regular TV and it was late. And I was like channel surfing. I was like bouncing between things, hoping something good would come on. Which we don't really do anymore. Now we kind of just doom scroll on Netflix or whatever. Um, but yeah, I was bouncing around and paused to watch it for a few seconds, and then they said something. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then I kept doom scrolling or channel surfing, and then I came back and they said something else, and I was like, "Wait a second, is this movie Casablanca?" Wait, is this this isn't. Wait, what? So I was. I was surprised that's what that movie. I mean, it's probably not a secret. It's just something I didn't know. It was a movie that I didn't pay any attention to when it came out. Um, you know, and so I didn't know, but I'm sure they probably said something about it. Where like, oh yeah, this is our post-apocalyptic Casablanca with Pamela Anderson. And but it was just something I picked up when watching it. It's like how many times have they made Seven Samurai, right? Yeah, in different ways. Yeah, that's been made all kinds of media over and over again. The same plot of a group of unwilling or reluctant heroes comes in and they organize a town to save it from some bad guys. The Three Amigos, right? That's basically Seven Samurai. But yeah, so you're saying that that movie is a must-watch. That I should watch Barbed Wire. Can't miss it. I go to my grave regretting having not seen it. There's a whole bunch of movies I'd like to watch. I saw 28 Years Later is on stream on Netflix, I think now. Just because so many things I'm doing, I have a hard time like sitting still for a film. Maybe if I get these scanned in and inked, and I just need to sit down and do a bunch of flats, I can do that on my iPad while I'm watching a movie or something. Oh yeah. Yeah, I need to watch some Kurosawa movies. Actually, a colleague of mine, he just did the DVD set for the Criterion Collection for Ran, the Kurosawa film. Sterling Hundley. If you're not familiar with his work, um, Sterling's a really great award-winning illustrator, traditional illustrator. For mostly for he's most known for his editorial illustration. Um, but yeah, he just did the DVD set design. Spent last spring designing that, so I got to see his process. It was really amazing. He was doing like the whole design. It was like a whole package where it's like he didn't just make images for it. He like designed all the packaging and all this stuff, and it really inspired me to adjust some of my course content to go look kind of. One of the things we're trying to do with our students at the university is kind of look beyond the assignment to the presentation of it. So like I'm doing this illustration class, and what we're trying to do with it is I don't want them to just do the illustration. I want them to show the work in context. So like they're doing a book cover right now. That's their first, for a lot of it's their first like real acrylic painting. We've been going through this whole process of creating reference and all this other stuff, and they but their final presentation isn't just the illustration; it's the book jacket. So they have to prepare options for the book jacket. To present, so there's three variations on what the book jacket could be using the initial finished version of their illustration. And then they have a week to finish that illustration all the way and the layout. And yeah, it was just something as I was watching, because we've been talking about kind of how we can help them be more professional. At the same time, I'm arguing with them about not using AI. Rather, a lot of professors, they want to use it. I don't get why, but they want to emphasize that as the future. And I'm like, I think it's a bad idea. But one area of agreement I've really gotten with the current department chair is that we need to start helping the students look beyond the assignment and kind of making them more of a complete package. So I think part of it is seeing their work as an actual book jacket. I think that will make a huge difference for how they approach their finished work because they're really seeing it in context, not just as a project in a class, but really as a professional presented piece. And they're going to make mistakes. But one of the complaints I saw coming to the department was that students aren't properly using typography in their layouts if they're doing like a poster or something like that. So yeah, we're doing iRobot, and I had them build some kit bashed robots, and so we bought model kits and we were gluing them up together in class. And use that for their robot reference. Which I thought was great. I've done that before, but we did this kind of more specific context. But yeah, so we're having them do that. I think that the next one's going to be editorial illustration, and so they're going to present it as a magazine article. So they're going to take, the Time article or Newsweek or wherever they're sourcing their editorials, and what they're going to do is they're going to do the main illustration, and then they're going to do a few vignettes, so some smaller, simple illustrations, and then they can take the text of that article. I don't expect them to write an article or anything, but it's like even with the book cover, they can pull the text from different sources if they want. The biography can come off of Wikipedia. Reviews can come from Amazon or whatever. But yeah, just kind of a different way of approaching it. I think that will make a difference for how they perceive the professional experience. Because even if in a job that's not going to be part of their responsibilities, like being able to understand how it all fits together by actually doing it, I think would be really helpful. So. So excited to see what results come from that. I saw some okay results, from their initial, because they presented their stuff this week. There was some confusion from some of them that weren't paying attention or got bad reminders from others, in spite of what the project said. But I think one of the problems we kind of face often as art departments is there tends to be, compared to say engineering or pre-med or whatever, I think there tends to be a lack of coherent approaches, and that kind of results in a lack of professionalism to a certain degree, where everyone's kind of just doing their own thing in their own art classes, which is part of that, I guess, academic freedom to a certain degree. But the way it's often done in art classes is you're taking things or being taught things in an inappropriate sequence. Whereas if you were taking a Spanish class, you'd start with 101, and most of the professors would probably all use the same textbooks. And even if they use different textbooks, they'd all be basically teaching the same things. But because of the way art works, you don't always get that with your art classes. And so they'll have teachers doing figure drawing in very, very different ways, and they're walking out of there with inconsistent results, and it makes it hard to follow up with others. And I saw that at SCAD, if Justine is still in there, but I would teach a drawing 1 class and a drawing 2 class, And the students that had me in drawing one that then took my class in drawing two, I was able to like pick up where we left off and move them forward. And but the ones that didn't take the drawing one class with me, but were in drawing two, I had to spend a lot of time kind of going back with them to help them out. And I don't mind doing that, but at the same time, it would be nice if there was like some consistency in what was being taught, some agreement over what was valid, what was important, and that way students could benefit from that. Yeah, but I know for me, like one of the things that made a big difference. This was like years after I graduated. I had my first gallery show, and last, I guess. Well, not last, but like it was a two-person show, so more focused on me. And seeing my work in frames on the wall is what led me to go to grad school. So I looked at the work and I'm like, some of it was good, but it was also like very inconsistent. And I really felt like I needed that extra experience that I would get in grad school to help me become more consistent with my work. And but it wasn't something I could really see until it was on a wall in front of other people in a in an important situation. Um, so you know, and so I think kind of making them do that is really important because it really awakens them to what's out there. I know, like we had a group of students go out to Lightbox, the big convention out in Pasadena during my first year. I didn't go until last year, but my first year here, which was 2 years ago, had a group of students go out, and they came back suddenly aware of the inadequacies of their work and really wanted to push themselves, and which was great. The school sent me out last year, so it was really great to go out and check everything out there. But um, but again, it made a kind of seeing their work in that context of others really kind of lit a fire under them, and they all worked really, really hard and came off, I think, much better for it. So this is the image that I deleted and then moved over and traced over here. So this has been kind of pre-prepared, so I just need to go in and pick out what I want to focus on here. Got a little light box under my table here. But yeah, if you haven't been to Lightbox, definitely recommend it. It was a great experience. You get to meet some of your art heroes out there and hear lectures and roundtables, and it's a real event. Um, but yeah, but it made a big difference for them because they're just like, oh, like well, I think one of the things I try to tell students this, where I'm like, especially freshmen, I'd be like, well, wherever you're from, you're probably the best artist there, right? But here, you're surrounded by all those people who were the best artists wherever they were from, and you know that you're going to have to level up to be the best. If you think you're looking around the room and you're like, oh, well, I'm better than the people I'm taking classes with, you need to realize that the people you're taking classes with may not be, or probably are not really going to be your competition when you graduate. Your competition for jobs and opportunities are the people that have been out there working professionally for their whole lives. That's the people you gotta. That's your target for excellence. It's not being better than the people you're in the classroom with. That doesn't matter very much. And it's not to dishearten because sometimes look like, well, I'll never be as good as so and so. I'm like, well, what got them good? Why are they good? They need to sacrifice and focus and develop their skills, and maybe you won't ever be as good as them, but why you won't necessarily end up being them either. You'll do other things. So, I think that's an important thing to factor in. But for them, it was just like going out there and really seeing that. But I can. That was like a realization I came to as a student. It's not that I was like the best artist in my class. I was one of the better students, but that's mostly just because I worked really hard. It didn't mean I was the most talented or the most excellent. There were definitely students there who were better. And there were some students who maybe weren't as talented, but they worked up really, really hard, and they've been very successful in the careers they've gone into. People that worked harder than I did. And so, kind of that base level of talent can only carry you so far. But makes a difference for sure. But if you're not willing to stick to things and put things out there, you're not going to get very far. But if you don't aim high, if your aim is just what you see around you, locally, provincially, I guess, it's just not going to get you much of anything. Oh, we got ourselves a bot. Twitch. Is Twitch like the worst platform to get bots for one? Let's see. Report. Scam. Bots. I love how they want you to submit a written report. I just typed some random letters in there. Delete you. There. And they're gone. But it can be hard to get that perspective again, just because you're used to just whatever you see around you as being the thing that you want to consider. So if you're the best artist or whatever among your social circle or your school circle or wherever you happen to find yourself, and that's the highest target you assume, then it's only gonna take you so far. Whereas if you look to the absolute best, if I had picked the absolute best, say, living sci-fi fantasy illustrator, I'd go with Donato Giancola for sure. Followed up by a few others, but definitely put him at the top of the list of ones that I would like, whose skills and storytelling and compositions and things like that I would love, that I would learn from a lot just by looking at his work. Be him. But if I were to target someone I thought was mid tier or lower tier, maybe it'd be easier for me to get closer to that, but I wouldn't ever get as far as I want to by making that my target. As if I did Donato was my target. I look at him to be the example of the things that I like to learn from. So, you know, it's like, someone were to set me as like the highest level artist for whatever I'm working on. Like, well, I've got some skills in different areas and I've done some things, but there's definitely others that I would point to as being, you know, better exemplars of the things that I like to do. But I appreciate the flattery. So, you know, that's one of the things we want to do with getting the students to do not just the book cover, but the layout is really kind of get them to look beyond that assignment and see what it's really for, and get them to see it in the circumstances it ends up. So it's not just some piece of board or whatever that they're carrying around in their portfolio, but an actual professionally presented thing. Not having them printed out though. Maybe I should, but I'll probably print some of them out. Let's get going. Um, Fill in that background. Actually, I got 2 boxes of these Mitsubishi Uni letter Fs. What I'm using for my pencils is the F grade. It's kind of like between an HB and a B, I guess, something like that. Or between a B and an H. I guess it's used mostly for drafting, but I think I like it for penciling. It's the F lead comes in. Let's see what you're saying. I got these, the Mitsubishi Uni. So it's like a Uniball Mitsubishi thing, I guess. I people really like these leads. Yeah, I have a like lead wood pencil ones downstairs in my kind of drawing kit down there. And it has like chalks and charcoal and things in there as well. Silver point, copper point, gold point pencils. So, yeah, if we saw some good initial layouts, beyond some confusion from a couple of students. So. 8:30, huh? I knew for sure I wanted to do this top row tonight, so that's a good estimation for what I could get done. Right? I saw a former student go full AI this week too. Unfollowed him. Student from when I was at my last school. It is like a bunch of like reels where it's like, this is the day in the life of me doing my freelance, whatever stuff. It's like showing off where he's at, and like, that content's not great anyway. And then he was like, oh, I decided to go on with AI because it's the future and allows me to focus on certain things. And now I don't have to worry about these other things. I was like, well, there you go. I'll just go ahead and drop you. I don't need to see any of this nonsense. I don't need that on my feed. It's like popular author whose books I recommend quite often, actually. He was posting a bunch of VizCom stuff this week. Artist, written some important art book, art instruction books, and he's gone all in on it because technology is great, and therefore any technology is good. It was disappointing to see. So come on, you of all people should know better. It doesn't take that. But I think he's partnered or invested in the company that he's using the software from. And the thing is like, if you're going to use this generative AI software to create kind of these fake painted versions of your drawings, which is what it does. VizCom is the name of the software, and basically it applies textures and finished renders to your sketches. So if you have like a rough sketch of a spaceship or something, it'll apply lighting and textures as if you painted it digitally. Which means it's just using other people's work to do that. But just seems kind of like a waste. But what I was saying is that it's a niche market. Like there's only going to be so many customers for that kind of software. It's going to be very limited to visual development, and what it costs to create, develop, and further that software is well beyond whatever value you could possibly sell it for. As much as people love Photoshop, right, for illustrating and painting and whatever, that's such a small portion of what Photoshop users use Photoshop for. You'll find way more people using it for like graphic design or photography than you'll ever find the number of people painting with it. That's why it took so long to get certain kind of artist illustration, painting friendly tools in there, like a different color picker, or being able to rotate the canvas or certain brushes and things like that. It's because the illustration market was just so small for it, across entertainment and publishing and all that. It's just not that big of a market. Period. So I'm not even sure like what the possibility is as far as like getting customers and subscribers to that software, because it's such a small market. Even if it theoretically does what it sets out to do, which is to increase the efficiency of creating finished renders for clients, to state it in a positive fashion, but so you have like maybe a few thousand potential customers in the whole world, maybe 10,000 at most. You get all of them, and those people just don't. People that would want to use that kind of software would just use the free options anyway. So I don't get the business model there. Beyond the fact that I wouldn't ever use it myself because I don't like what it does. But what do I know? I ask these kinds of questions and people look at me like I'm a crazy person. It's like, well, we'll figure it out. Okay. Well, let me know. In the meantime, I'm going to keep drawing. All right. It's like I could point at that Donato Giancola guy. Here's the sequence here. So I come over here. He's grief-stricken because his father is down here. He's just died. And you see one of the other corpses from the explosion. And there he is looking at his tools and the debris. And here's collected up his colleagues and friends, putting them up on the fire, lighting it up, and we've got a big scene down here where he's bidding them farewell. So that's what we're working on here. The previous page, I'm going to probably finish up here in a minute. Yeah, so originally this whole page was going to be the whole different thing. Back up here with this. Back up here. So I was going to have that kind of same thing happening here that's happening over here. And then I was going to have him maybe have his friends right here. He's kind of gathered up their stuff, or he's going to light up in a pile or something. And then he's going to be turning back, looking over his shoulder in this flashback, and then we would skip to the present. And here he is walking through, the architecture of this alien space on the planet that he hadn't been in before kind of coming to a rest while there's some weird worms coming at him. But I was looking like, I need to have more of. We've had all this explosions and excitement and stuff falling down and monsters screaming out into the dark. But we needed to have like this quiet resolution, I guess. Balance toss this out over here. These are the pages I've done. Let's back this up a little bit. My dog was just like, who are you talking to? I'm like, possibly no one. This is where we started off. So this is the kid who's piling bodies up there. I probably need to make him look a little bit younger in those drawings. But here they are with the crew. They're putting some bombs up on the walls because they got some bad company. Their friend is already toast down here, but he has the detonator in his hand. So before he's about to get eaten, he clicks it, which gives them a 5-second countdown. So 5, 4, 3, 2, running out the door. And here we'll see 1, and then we'll close up and do a 0, 0 here. And then that leads to, that the explosion here. So there's I'm probably going to increase their size here, thinking about it. This is the father and son that jumped out. And they kind of get saved by the fact that it blows out above them a little bit. But some of their friends who are running away, they aren't so lucky. There's been a big explosion going across here. And then they're running, so the father and son are here. Kind of see one of the guys messed up over here. They pause to kind of look back, and there's none of their messed up friends. They're looking back, so it's father and the son. And then the rest of the ship goes up. Kaboom. And here we are right over here. And there's some of their still living friends running away from the situation. And then, let's see, let's back this stuff over here. So then I have this giant table, which isn't big enough. Yes, one of the problems when I start working on these larger sheets, it always feels strange when you start working larger. But once you start working larger, it just feels normal at a certain point. So, big ship explosion. And then we get them running, and there's debris coming down. And to fix his face, it looks a little too, it's Asian in that instead. Some of the little tweaks I want to make on this page too. But there's the little critters right over here, and then you see the critters scream out because there's a big explosion going down. And there's one of their friends getting taken out. And here they are running from the debris. A little screaming face over here. Closer up, and then some of the debris coming down. And then we skip to an establishing shot of the ship that they were just in. That blew up, the results of it. And then here's the son and the father, and the son and the father. He's got some debris in him, and the father swears him to keep a secret. A secret that he cannot keep, and then he passes away. And so this is for the moment. The father passes away, and he starts going through the stuff we were just working on here. So, oops, don't fall down the paper. And put up the fire. And then this is the big shot down here where he's bidding them farewell, and that's what I'll probably work on. A good chunk of tomorrow is this stuff over here. See if I can't get this whole scene done. Scanned in and then get it inked. A piece of paper still fell on the floor. Anyway. So that's where we're at with the story here. And this is me. I'm trying to put it together enough pages A to kind of get some good practice in. Again, because I've never done comics professionally at all, and I'm the kind of person that's aware that. Oops, just crank up my paper a little bit. I'm self-aware enough that I know I've got to get some volume in. Let's put that up there. There we go. Everybody from falling off. And I want to have enough pages for a pitch, whether that gets done as a crowdfunder or as a publisher, like sending it to one of the indie publishers out there. That I feel confident about being able to successfully complete the project and present that confidence to them. So Well, that's where we're at. So I think we're going to call it there for tonight. And I appreciate everybody that came in. Let me know if there's any questions. If you do comment comic here, my little chat bot will assist you in getting on the email list. So when I do actually get this set up to be available at some point in the future, whether it's crowdfunded or otherwise, we'll notify you. So it's just collecting it to an email list that I'll use for this project. So anyway, appreciate it, and we'll talk to you all later. Shut this down.